So Mishnah had says chatat v'asham v'adai mechap. So chatat and asham. What's the chatat and what's the asham?
They're korbanot.
Right. So the korbanot that we bring for different averot that we for different transgressions that were done b'shogeg or without knowledge. This instances when we bring a chatat and a sham, I don't think we'll get into that tonight, but I think it's something that we should look in when we get back. I will maybe bring a couple of references. Just, I know you've done a lot of Mishnah, so some of these I think you would have seen.
Yeah, but I also forget a lot too. Somewhere I made a cheat sheet with the korbanot, the various korbanot. But
that's good.
I remember what.
I have in mind to make one. One of the reasons I make charts is, it's for me. It's me doing my own chazara.
Yeah.
So I think I will make up some charts for that. Chatat v'asham vadai mechaprim. In other words, we're talking about two kinds of korbanot here. We're talking about two kinds of korbanot here, the chatat and the asham vadai. Right? So there's an asham vadai and an asham talui. Sometimes there's an asham that you bring when you're not sure if you're over on a particular mitzvah. And then there's certain types of asham that you bring for sure, on a certainty. So the mechaper. So this needs to be expanded upon because Pshuto shel inyan is that if you did an avera that requires you to bring a chatat or to bring an asham vadai, so then once you bring them, then you get kapara. At that point, you get kapara. Then it says, Mitav Yom Kippurim mechaprim im hatshuva. Death and Yom Kippur bring atonement with tshuva. So we talk about death. What do we mean here by death? That is, the person dies, but there are different circumstances under which people die. Sometimes die naturally, and sometimes, there are other ways of dying. So in this context of chatat, nasham vadai, and Yom HaKippurim, what do we think that Mita might refer to?
I would say that two things. One, for avarot where chatat or lasham vadai are not applicable, or if the person had a chance to bring the korban.
Didn't have. Oh, so that's interesting. So in other words, the way you're understanding it is it's following from the previous statement that the baseline is going to be for chatat and for asham. And then barring that, then death. So in that context, you're saying that, let's say a person was supposed to bring korban chatat and he died before he had the chance to bring it. So then maybe the mita, maybe natural death, is a kapara for what he was supposed to bring the chatat for. another possibility is that mita here means mitat beitin,
Mita Beitin, yes.
right? So, but I'm not going to discount what you said. It's an interesting point. So why would I say mitat beitin? Because I could also say that falls from chatat and asham vadai. That is, it's a punishment that the Torah dictates for certain types of averot. On the other hand, it doesn't follow exactly in the sense that chatat and asham vadai. Well, you know what? I'll leave it at that for the moment. And of course, Yom Kippurim is mechaper. So, what does it mean that Yom Kippurim is mechaper? How is Yom Kippurim mechaper?
Just the passing of the time of Yom Kippur in itself is a kapara. It's hence the name. It's
very good. Yeah, Atzmut Yom, the very essence of the day, is mechaper. Presumably, it's going to be mechaper if you follow all the rules of Yom Kippur.
I was going to ask if it's you have to follow, you have to do it.
You have to do it, and so that's another it's another point that needs to be fleshed out more. But basically the passing of time, simply going through Yom Kippurim, is going to also in itself bring kapara. And then it says mitav Yom Kippurim mechaprim imat tshuva. They're mechaprim with tshuva. So, question reading here, what does im hatshuva refer to? What is mechaper with tshuva? So the immediate context is, and this is the way I have it laid out here, but now I'm thinking I should change the layout. Mitav Yom Kippurim, they are mechaprim with tshuva. So what about chatat v'asham vadai? Do they also need tshuva? In other words, does imat tshuva refer only to mitav Yom Kippurim, or does it refer back to everything? I'm going to put that here. So that's something that we would need to clarify. Hatshuva mechaperet al averot kalot al aseh ve'al ta'aseh. So tshuva atones for light sins, for positive and for negative, that positive and negative light sins. Right? So of course our question is going to be, what does an avera kala mean? What's the definition of an avera kala? V'al hachamurot hitola. For the heavier sins, or the heavy sin, stringent sins, it suspends ad Yom Kippurim v'yichaper, until Yom Kippurim comes, and that gives it. So now we've introduced an idea that we can divide averot into two categories. There's averot kalot and averot chamurot, right? Al hachamurot is as if it says we are aves hachamurot. And we've also introduced an idea of tola, that you can be in a suspended kapara, that you've done you did a certain Aveira, and if it was an Aveira Chamura, and you did Tshuva for that Aveira Chamura, you don't immediately get kapara. Your kapara is suspended until Yom HaKippurim. So what does it mean that it's suspended? What do you think that indicates?
Well, as opposed to the light ones, you don't get immediate kapara, but if it's just, then it sounds like it's like like limbo, like there's a waiting state. You're not judged on it, or you're not punished for it. And well, but then no, it doesn't make sense. I'm not sure.
No, that's okay. No, but I one way of saying it is, what does it mean to be suspended? Yeah, it seems to indicate some kind of a limbo situation. That is, you did the Aveira, you did Tshuva, but at that moment you don't get kapara, but you're in this state of suspension. So what is being suspended?
Your kapara.
Your kapara is being suspended. So, but you also said your kapara is being suspended. Something else you also alluded to is maybe also whatever punishment you might get is also suspended. So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, is there a presumption that you won't get kapara on Yom Kippur?
Why do you
Is that
ask?
possible?
Yeah, it's possible, but what we've seen so far is that when Yom Kippurim comes, and then we'll add in the layer that we're assuming if you experience Yom Kippurim kihilchato, then that will bring your kapara. That's supposed to be the norm. I'm just pointing out it's an interesting concept, right? That your kapara is suspended. That is, from the moment you do tshuva from an aveira chamura, you've now removed. It seems like you've now removed yourself from a situation where maybe you're at that until you do tshuva, you're liable for whatever punishment is associated with that aveira. So when you remove yourself from that, maybe now Michael is coming. So you removed yourself from that situation, but you haven't got kapara. So to put it a slightly different way. What do we kapara? What is kapara in this context or in any context? So this is a very short Mishnah, but it's carrying a lot. There's a lot of stuff that's being carried here. We don't know what all of it is yet. So, well, Werner, we just finished reading Mishnah Chet, and we're going to go back and read it again now with the Bartanura. Chatat v'asham vadai. So the Bartanura says, Chatat v'asham vadai, mechaprim im hatshuva. Right, so the Bartanura right away tells us, and he answers this question, that this line here, im hatshuva, refers all the way back to the beginning. In other words, Chatat, Asham vadai, Mita, and Yom Kippurim, all of these are mechaper with tshuva. That is, if you're chayav a chatat, So it means that you did an Aveira b'shogeg, which the Torah obliges you to bring a korban chatat. So if you simply bring the korban chatat, you have not gotten kapara. You only get kapara if you bring the korban chatat and you do tshuva. So you need both. You need both of these things. Chatat v'sham v'dai mechaprim hatshuva v'lochash hatana lahazkira. The Tana didn't concern himself to mention it. The mistam kashu mevi chatato v'hashamo farasad tshuva. Because mistama, right? That is, our assumption is going to be that when he brings a korban chatat, or he brings his asham vadai, he's already done tshuva. Why would we assume that? Shin lo haya mitcharet, lo haya mevi korban. Because if he didn't have any regrets, he wouldn't be bringing the korban to begin with. Okay, so the way the Bartanur is reading it, he's not saying the words ima tshuva as they're written here in the Mishnah are meant to refer back to here. Rather, it's just an assumption. So of course, if that's true, then why do I assume it here and not here? That is, we have chatat v'asham vadai, right? So for those of you who came a little bit late, chatat and asham vadai are two korbanot, right? There's an asham vadai, and in contrast to the asham talui. An asham vadai is something that you bring for, as the Bartanur will explain right now. Asham vadai, we go on asham gezelot to asham meilot. The Torah mandates bringing a korban asham when you for robbery or for me'ilah. Me'ilah is to benefit from something that belonged to hekdesh. So you have to bring a korban asham. So what's the difference in the first line? Chatat v'asham v'dai mechaprim. Okay, and then mita v'yom kippurim mechaprim. What's the qualitative difference between a chatat and asham vadai as opposed to mita v'yom kippurim?
The first one would seem to require an action, whereas it's not clear that the second one does. I mean, some.
Okay, yes. So let's, and we'll see a bit better. In other words, the first one, this is what you're intending to say. Chatat and asham vadai require the yuzma. They require the initiative of the person who did the aveira. Whereas mita and yom kippurim are things that happen to him or her. So it could be that's also Tana says mita v'yom kippurim mechaprimim hatshuva, because it's not obvious when something happens to you that you're going to have done tshuva. Right? When mita or yom kippurim happen, it doesn't necessarily mean that you did tshuva, but what the Bartanur is saying is if already taking the initiative to bring a chatat or an asham vadai, that indicates that you're done or you're in the process of doing. So that's why the Tana does have to mention it in the first instance, in the first line, but the Tana mentions it in the second line. Okay. Hatshuva mechaperet al averot chalot al aseh v'al lo taseh. So tshuva brings kapara averot kalot for positive and negative commandments. So for those of you also who came a little bit late, we went through the Mishnah and asked a number of questions. Of course, one of the questions here is going to be, what are Averot Kalot? And the Mishnah goes on and talks about Chamurot. The Mishnah says there's such a thing as Averot. They're light Averot and they're heavy Averot. So what is an Averah Kala and what is an Averah Chamura? Here doesn't tell us, it doesn't list, but we understand that you can divide mitzvot generally into kalot and chamurot. The thing that the Mishnah doesn't tell me is, what do I mean by kapara? What does the Mishnah mean by kapara? So we'll talk about that as well. Right now, I'm just translating. I'm saying it means atonement. Atonement is a very modern word. We have to understand what kapara means in a Mishnaic and a Torah context. But for the moment, let's just see how the Bartanura explains it. Tshuva mechaper ta'averot kalot al'aseh ve'lo ta'aseh. So the Bartanura says, for positive, right, Tshuva is mechaper for averot kalot for positive and negative commandments, but he continues this sentence, Lo ta'aseh hanikla aseh, tshuva mechaperet. It doesn't mean stam lo ta'aseh, like the average say. It's talking about a negative commandment that's nitak la'aseh. So what's a negative? What does it mean? A lo ta'aseh hanitak la'aseh. Is anyone here familiar with this concept of a lo ta'aseh hanitak la'aseh? You're actually all familiar with it, but you may not know this term, the terminology. Michael Werner, do you
Yes,
want to
I'm
say
going to guess that it's actually a commandment to refraining, the action, in some sense, the refraining from doing an action is in itself an action.
Okay, that's an interesting idea, but it's wrong. So that's okay. Let me show you. There's certain mitzvot. Just a second. There's certain mitzvot that you're familiar with, and in fact, we read about some of them just in the last couple of parshas, where the Torah tells you not to do something, and then it immediately says, do something. In other words, do something in that context. So one of them is, let's say, kan tzipur, right? It says, you're not lo tita kachem ha'abanim. If you hop on a nest, right? So you're not supposed to take the mother away from the children. But what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to, yeah, go ahead.
Away the mother.
You say it again?
Send away the mother and then take the eggs.
Right. So that's a lo ta'aseh hanitak la'aseh. That is, the Torah says, don't do this, but instead do this, right? So you should do, right? You're not supposed to take the mother away from, like, while like children, like the offspring are still there. You're supposed to send away. It takes the negative commandment, and one way is it turns it into a positive commandment. So here, this is the Mishnah in Makot, Perek Gimel. This Mishnah is here in this Perek. Makot, for those who learned Makot, gives us a list of people who have done various Averot for which they're Chayav Malkot. That is, if you do these Averot, the Mezid, you do them on purpose in front of witnesses, and the witnesses warned you that if you go ahead and do what you're about to do, that you're going to be liable to this punishment, then you're liable to this punishment. This punishment here is Malkot. So it gives us a whole list. There's a parallel list in Kritot. Just a second. Any of you have learned Kritot? Kritot, you might guess correctly. Talks about this is a bit of more information than we need right now, but I think in the context of all the things we'll be learning, we might as well just get an idea, and you can all look at these things yourself. The Mishnah in Kritot tells us there are 36 Kritot b'Torah, and there's 36 Averot, which if you're over alehem mezid, you can be chayav karet for them. And then it lists them. It lists all of them, right? So what are they? Haba, ha'em, v'al ta'a, v'al kala, etc. There's a whole long. So there's an overlap here. Elohein halokim. Here back in Makot, we have the people who get malkot, that are whipped by Beit Din for certain Averot. So when do you get karet, and when do you get karet, and when do you get malkot? So karet you'll get if you're over on these Averot, the mezid, but without witnesses and warning, right? In order to get any punishment from Beit Din only meets punishment if witnesses can come forth and testify not only that they saw you do it, but that they warned you in advance not to do it. So if somebody did an Aveira not in front of witnesses or not with witnesses and warning, but they nonetheless did it b'mezid, so then it's out of the hands of Beit Din, but it's in Idei Shemayim, and the Torah says you'll get karet for those things. So meaning, if you don't otherwise have some other way of getting kapara, you'll get karet. But one of the ways you can get kapara, again, not everything for which you're chayav malkot is in the list of things for chiyuv karet. For certain things that you might otherwise be chayav karet, you might get malkot. So there's a long list. One of them, by the way, is ha'oseh malacha b'yom kippurim. Somebody who does malacha in Yom Kippur is chayav malkot. And this, I'm just mentioning this because this came up in a kind of roundabout way last time, where I said in a certain halachic sense, Shabbat is more chamur than Yom Kippurim, because if you do melacha on Shabbat with edim tra'ah, right, with witnesses and a warning, what's the punishment?
Death.
Death. It's a chiyuv mitah. If you do malacha on Yom Kippurim with edim and hatra, you get malkot. So in that sense, Yom Kippurim is kal, right? It's lighter than Shabbat. That's just a parenthetical point I wanted to make. point out here. Okay, so I have this long list of various averot for which one can get malkot. Here I come to Mishnah Dalet, Hanotel Eim al Habanim. So if somebody removes the mother from the nest while the offspring are there, Rabbi Yehuda Omer lokeh ve'eno mishaleach. Rabbi Yehuda says he gets malkut for removing the mother, right? Because it says lo tikach eim al habanim, and then he doesn't. There's no point in him then sending it away. Chachamim omrim mishaleach ve'eno lokeh. Chachamim say no, he sends away the mother and he doesn't get malkot. So let's just see the bar Tanur here. Lokeh ve'eno mishalech. This is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Desvir leil Rabbi Yehuda tishalach me'ikara mashma. When the Torah says shalech tishalach, that you have to send away the mother, even though it comes after the negative statement, lo teim al banim, and then it says shalech tishalach. Rabbi Yehuda holds it means that's what you're supposed to do. The chatchila, you're supposed to send away the mother. The aval gav tiktiv shalech tishalach. Even though the positive commandment is written after the negative one, lav lameimra dilim nakata tishalach. It doesn't mean to say that if you did go ahead and take the mother, that you should still send away. Ela lo tikach. Rather, what it means is don't take the mother. Aval shalchena kum lekicha. Send her away before you would take her. The ain't a love hanitak say. And so therefore, this is not a love that is made into an assay. Yes. Go ahead.
I want to ask a question. I just don't know what to. I heard a long time ago that there are Haredim who purposely climb on the tree and they send the mother away and they take the eggs of the small birds, even if they don't need them, because they think they did a mitzvah this way. Although I would think that it's completely cruel to do such a thing.
So it's interesting thing.
How do they explain that what they are doing? I just don't understand.
There is an idea that, and it's not just Haredim, it's brought down in Achronim, and there are different reasons for this. And I don't know. We have time a little in a minute. I don't know. I can show you this in Halacha, but prepare it. So I don't want to take time to look for it. It's in Yoredea. There is an idea that in order to mekayem the mitzvah of shalech tishalach et ha'em, that you should do that, and then you don't take the eggs. You pick them up. You lift them up 3 tefachim to show ownership, and then you put them back. But that way you're mekayem the mitzvah of shalech tishalach.
But
that's the quick.
Once you touch the eggs, the mother doesn't want to take care of them anymore.
So I can tell you this from personal experience. I think I don't know if that's true at all, but I can tell you it's not always true, because I've had this experience now a couple of times, because I have an empty tzitz in front of my window here. And also this happened to me when I was actually I didn't do the shalech tishalach when I was in the States, but it happened to me when I was in the States, where the pigeon made a nest right in front of my window. So first of all, I saw that even though and also in the the interesting with certain kinds of pigeons, the ones I was looking at in the States, this is neither here nor there. Both the mother and the father sit on the eggs. They take turns sitting on the eggs. In the case of the pigeons, at least the ones that are here in Jerusalem, if you pick up the eggs and put them back down, the pigeon is going to come back and sit on them again. What happens practically is that the pigeons are there like all the time, and they kind of get used to the fact that I'm there as well. But if I open the window, that startles them, and then they'll fly away. And then I could pick up the egg and put them back down, and then after a while, the bird will come back. I have heard that for some bird, the mother or the parents won't come back. I don't know if that's true. I've never done that research. I can just tell you from a practical point of view, if you want to be mekayem this mitzvah, and you happen to have a pigeon nest next to you, I can tell you it'll work. You can just make some kind of a movement. You don't even have to touch the bird. Just make some kind of a movement that'll frighten the bird. It'll fly away. You can lift up the eggs and you can put them back down. That's the quick answer to your question.
I believe I believe that's considered to be a segula for having children.
I don't know. What I can tell you is the Torah says that it's right. It's one of two mitzvot for which you live a long life, right? Right? So that it's one of the only places where the Torah says that if you fulfill this mitzvah, you live along there. That's what the Torah says. And I don't know. What I know is that I think I believe that this mitzvah took on some importance in Kabbalah, from Kabbalistic sources, so that people do go out of their way to be Mekayem. I'm not sure that I would climb up a tree to do it unless I was sure of my climbing skills. I'm not sure if you're allowed to put yourself in danger to do it, but we'll leave it at that. So let's go back though here. So we have this machlokes.
There is the story that one of the two stories, one of the explanations of why Ben Abuya apostatized is that he saw a child fulfilling the mitzvah and he fell down and died.
Yeah, that's what he says. He says that to Rebbe Meir. He says that's yeah. Okay. Oh, hang on one second. Let me share this other screen with you. Okay. So it's just to understand this machloka between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. We didn't read the Bartanura yet, but let's just read this in the pasuk. Ki kare kansi por lefanecha b'chol eitz o haaretz efrochim o veitzim. Right. So if you happen upon a bird's nest in front of you on the way, or in any tree, or on the land, on the ground, with young birds or with eggs, and the mother is hovering over the chicks, or over the eggs. Do not take the mother on the children. Right. So it sounds like you don't remove the mother while she's hung over her young. Rather, you send the mother. Surely you should send the mother away. And you should take the children, the offspring, for yourself. That it should be good for you, and you should have length of days, right? Your days should be lengthened. So the machloket here is according to Rabbi Yehuda. So what? First of all, let's understand. The Torah says two things. It says lo tikacha em al abanim, and then right afterwards it says shalech tishalach et ha'em. I'm sorry, excuse me. As I said to Michael Schwartz, I'm still a little bit out of it. Okay, so when I see lo tikacha em al abanim, then I would say, if I stopped there, I'd say this is a mitzvah lo ta'aseh. Telling me you don't do this, meaning that if you would do this, then you'll be liable for punishment, right? If you do take the mother al habanim, then you'll be punished because it's a mitzvah lo ta'aseh. And since there's not another punishment that's indicated, then the default punishment is going to be malkot, which we learn out elsewhere. But then it also says shalech tishalach et ha'em. You should send the mother away and take the children, take the offspring. So this is a positive commandment, right? And here it's definitely in a command form. Shalech tishalach, definitely a command form. A mitzvah lo ta'aseh, and I have a mitzvah aseh. So Rabbi Yehuda says, Shalech tishalach et ha'em. You should understand, even though it comes in the next, the idea is that when you happen upon the Kan Sipur, you're enjoined to send the mother away. That's really what you're supposed to do. And so there isn't a love that's nitak l'aseh. It's not a love that has become an aseh, that the Torah is turning into an aseh. Aseh by itself. And so then it would indicate that the lo ta'aseh aspect stands by itself. That is, if you took the mother while the offspring were there, that would be a lo ta'aseh itself. And therefore, you're chayav malkot if you do take the mother. Anotel ema abanim Rabbi Yehuda omer lokeh ve'eno mishalech. So he says, if you went, Rabbi Yehuda says, if you went ahead and you took the mother from her offspring, then you're chayav malkot, and there is no mitzvah anymore of sending them up. And so that's what the Barter is explaining. That when the Torah says shalech tishalach, that's what should be done to begin with. That's the first thing that's implied. And even though it's written after lo tikach, it doesn't mean to say that if you went ahead and took the mother, that after that you should send her away. Rather, it's trying to tell you the Torah means don't take the mother at all, but just off. And so it's not a love that the Torah is turning into an aseh. The Chachamim understand it differently, and they say, Mishaleach ve'eno lokeh, kasavri shach la'achar lekicha mashma. They say no. Read the verses in their plain order, and sending away the mother comes after taking. The Torah here is introducing us to a love of not taking the mother and turning to an aseh, meaning if you take the mother, then you send her away. And then by sending her away, then you will not incur malkot. So this is a lav hanitakle. This is a classic love, let's say. And then the Mishnah says, Zeh haklal. This is the general rule. Kol mitzvat lo ta'aseh, sheyesh bakum aseh, ein chayavin aleh. Any negative commandment that has a positive commandment, meaning, as we'll see, as where the Torah gives us a negative commandment that's followed by a kumase, don't do something, rather do something, right? Don't do X, but do Y. Then ein chayavin aleh. You're not obligated to that. In other words, you're not chayav malkot, right? That's our context here. This Mishnah here is brought at the end of this list of various things that you're chayav malkot for, because here we have all the other things the Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda agree upon, but here they have a machloket about Kansipor. Is Kansipor a lav hanitakla aseh, or is there a lav that just stands by itself? So Bartanu here explains, Kol mitzvah lo taseh sheyesh bakum aseh shamra Torah im avarta alav kayem ha'aseh. What is any place where the Torah says that if you transgress this negative commandment, then do this positive commandment? Could go, for example, like the example we bring in the Mishnah, lo tikach ha'abanim. But if you did to mother, then send her away. And then he brings other examples. Lo tavo beito avot avoto, right? So if somebody owes you money and you've taken an avot, you've taken a pledge for security. You took one of their possessions for security. You don't go to the house to collect the pledge. But if you did come and take the pledge, you took the security, then you have to return it. Right there also, the Torah gives us the lota aseh and immediately gives us the aseh. Kol elu, right? We also have azov to azovim. We have recently, right? So if you see, you're not supposed to ignore your fellow man when you see that their doggy is lying down under its weight. You're supposed to help him, right? So there's a lo taseh and there's an aseh. Kol elu im kiyem ha'aseh eno lokeh. In all of these cases, if you do the positive commands, then you're not chayav malkot. But if you didn't do the positive commandment, keep going. For example, you took the mother from off the mother bird off the oven, and then you slaughtered her, or she died while she was in your possession, or lakacha avot mi beito v'nisraf. You took the security, you took the pledge, the person you lent money to from their house, and then before you could return it, it burnt. In other words, you could no longer do the aseh of returning the avot. Then you'll get malkot. So this is the idea of the lav hanitakla aseh. Let's go back to our Mishnah. So this is what he's talking about. So the Mishnah says, "Hatshuva mechaperet." Hatshuva mechaperet al averot kalot al aseh v'al ta'aseh. Tshuva brings kapara, brings atonement for light transgressions, and in the Mishnah it says for positive and negative light transgressions. So the Bartanura says when talking about Lotas, it's talking about Lotas Hanitaklas. There's a machloket in the Gemara and also in the Rishonim about Lav Haklase, but everybody agrees that Lav Hanitaklas ain't Lokina Lav. You don't get Malkut for a Lav Hanitaklas, as well just now in the Mishnah. That's the conclusion of the Mishnah. So the Bartanura says, so for this category of Averot, that is Averot Kalot that were either positive commandments or negative commandments that were turned into positive commandments, then if you do tshuva, you get kapara. So what does it mean? We're talking about a mitzvat aseh. What is your over on a mitzvah to say? Transgress a positive commandment.
You're in time, place, and circumstance where you are required to do the mitzvah and you don't.
Yeah, you don't do the mitzvah. In other words, it's really it's a bitul mitzvah, right? Don't do the mitzvah, and you would say yes. Time, place, sense, yes. In other words, very good. If you're in a position to do a positive commandment and you don't do it, then that's a bitul aseh. So that also requires kapara. Right, so we have there are two mitzvot. I say that if you're mevatelotam, you actually get a punishment. You get karet. So what are the mitzvot that if you don't do them, you're chayav karet? There's only two mitzvot for which you're chayav karet.
I believe the korban. I think the korban pesach is one of them.
Correct. Korban Pesach is one of them. If you don't do the Korban Pesach, when you could have done the Korban Pesach, then you're Chayav Karet. What's
the other one? The other one's Brit Milah.
And the other one is Brit Milah. Very good. So that's back here in the Mishnah and Kritot. It's the end of the Mishnah. After it brings all of the Lota Aseh, it says a Pesach v'Hamila b'mitzvot Aseh. Right. So in the list of things for which you're chayav karet, among the 36 things, you're chayav karet for Pesach and Brit Milah. So if you're mevatel Pesach and you're mevatel Brit Milah, then you're chayav karet. So that would imply that in terms of kapara, you don't get kapara for those things. You're chayav karet. But for other mitzvot to say, right? So outside of Pesach and Brit Milah, if you're mevatel any other mitzvah, like if you don't put zuzah, you don't wear tefillin, or you don't, I'm not blanking. You don't observe Shabbat. Well, observing Shabbat is a separate thing, but let's say, or if you don't say Kiddush on Shabbat, which is the mitzvah taseh of Shabbat, right? All of those things, you also need kapara for being mevatel those mitzvot. So a long time ago, when we started looking into we learned that that there is a kapara for mitzvot aseh and mitzvot lo taseh hanitakim laaseh, and that's to bring a korban olah. You bring a korban olah nidava. You bring voluntarily. You bring a korban olah, and then that will be a kapara. But the Mishnah here doesn't mean that. We learned that elsewhere. The Mishnah here is saying that for aseh and nitakla aseh, tshuva itself is mechaperet. Avalota says sheyesh ba malkot. For all the other mitzvot lo taseh, for which you'll be chayav malkot, tshuva tola makipurim mechaper. So when the Mishnah here says that tshuva mechaperet al averot kolot al aseh ve'al taseh, you have to understand that the Bartenu is saying you have to understand aseh ve'al taseh hanitak laseh. It's as if it's saying hanitak laseh, because if it wasn't nitak laseh, then when you do tshuva, your tshuva is tola. It's suspended until Yom Kippur, and then Yom Kippur will give you kapara. Maskana de milta b'Gemara. So the conclusion of this thing in the Gemara is as follows. Now I'll read this, but I did actually I prepared a chart, which I'm not completely satisfied with, but it'll help us to get through this. But I'll just read this. So she'im heizid ba'aseh uvelav hanitak la'aseh. That, let's say you purposely did not do a mitzvah aseh, or you purposely did not do the aseh of the lav hanitak aseh when you could have, or when you should have. So that's mezid, right? To be mitzvah aseh or lav hanitak aseh. How do you get kapara for that? O shagag belota aseh sheyesh bo malkot, or in that same category, you did a negative commandment for which you would be chayav. You did it b'shogeg. You did it unconsciously, and then you realized v'asat tshuva, and then you did tshuva. Eno zaz misham shemocha lina. You don't move from there until you're granted a pardon. That is, Shemayim, you'll get mechila if you do tshuva for these three categories: either bitul mitzvah taseh, bitul lav hanitak laseh, even if you did them b'meizid, or mitzvah lo taseh, for which you're chayav malkot, which you did b'shogeg. All of those you get kapitu tshuva, and you get kapara immediately. But what if you purposely were over on a negative commandment for which you're chayav malkot? Now you're doing it on purpose. Tshuva tola v'yom kippurim mechaber. So you do tshuva right away, or lachazman, whenever you do tshuva. So then tshuva suspends. So this is something that Michael Schwartz and I were talking about. So what does it mean to suspend? So presumably it means that for the moment you're suspended from any kind of punishment, but you don't get kapara Yom Kippur. But then the day of Yom Kippur itself is going to give you kapara. If you then you go to the next category. So we started off with mitzvot aseh. Mitzvot aseh and mitzvot lav hanitak aseh. That's essentially the same thing because they're all positive. They're all essentially positive commandments. So even if you do them b'meizid, you still need kapara, and when you do them, so if you do tshuva, you'll get mechila. If you did a negative commandment for which you're chayav malkot, and you do tshuva, so then tshuva is tola, and Yom Kippurim, if you did it b'mezid, then tshuva is tola, and Yom Kippurim is mechaper. Then we come to the next category, chayavei kritot umitot beit din. If you do aver for which you're chayav karet, or you're chayav capital punishment from beit din, then hachatat mechaperet in hatshuva. Then you have to bring a korban chatat, and it'll be mechaper along with you doing tshuva. But if you were on a chiyuv karet or a chiyuv mitat beit din, Yom Kippurim tolin, then tshuva and Yom Kippurim tole, they suspend your punishment, v'yisurim emarkin, and then hardships that you will suffer, clean out, right? In other words, that will be the final parts, whatever it is, that whatever hardships the Kadosh Baruch Hu brings upon you, that will bring your final mechila. Bahane mile, so all of these we're talking about kishalot le'ot Hashem. This is provided that none of these averot involved chilul Hashem. So here, for this purpose, the Bartanur says that what is chilul Hashem? That you didn't sin and cause others to sin. Aval im chilel Hashem, but if you're mechalel Shem Hashem, ein kaparato nigmer ad shiamut, then his kapara is not complete until he dies. This all that here that I've described, this is all true at a time when we don't have the Sira Mishtaleach. אבל בזמן שיש סיר המשתלח, הוא מכפר על כל העבירות, קלות וחמורות, חוץ מהעבירות שבין החברו, שהן מתכפר לו עד שירצה את חברו. Right, so at the time of the Beit HaMikdash, when there was a Mishtaleach, so then the Sir Mishtaleach, that when we have this idea that the Sir Mishtaleach is mechaper al kol ha'averot, that's what it means. The Mishtaleach is mechaper in all of these cases where otherwise your punishment is suspended, right? Where it says tolin, and then either you need Yom Kippur, or you need Yisurin, or you need Mitah. In all of those cases, if there was a Sir Mishtaleach, then the Sir Mishtaleach brings your kapara. Except for if you sinned against your fellow man, and you have to, then you have to make up with them. Then even the Sir Mishtaleach can't bring kapara if you sinned against your fellow man. So if you owe them money, you have to pay them the money. If you insulted them, you have to apologize, like whatever it is. That's something that's always any averot that you did to your fellow man. None of these things will help. You always have to be meratzeh. You have to appease your fellow man for those things. So here I'll show you. I want to actually rethink this. I did this earlier today just to try to give a quick rundown. All of these averot. So this is a summary, right? You have a mitzvot aseh, b'shogeg. Actually, should also put b'mezid, right? Whether it's b'shogeg or whether it's b'mezid. Hold on. Then the Shuvah and the Korban Olah is going to bring you kapara. here I have Ase b'mezid is tshuva. Lav anitak la'aseh is tshuva. That brings you on. Lo taseh malkot, the shogeg tshuva brings you kapara. Lo taseh malkot b'mezid, tshuva tola v'yom kippurim chayvei kretot, the shogeg, tshuva and korban chatat, or mitot beit din, the same thing. Chayvei kretot b'mezid, tshuva v'yom kippurim tolin v'yisurim amarkin. Same thing for mitot beit din, and for Chilu Hashem, tshuva yom kippurim yisurim tolin and mitam lechaper. Okay, that's my quick rundown. I think I wanted to look at the last Mishnah, but I think since we're here, I think we'll do the last Mishnah next week. I think in the last part of the shir, I'll show you the Rambam's formulation here in Hilchot Tshuva. So maybe you've learned this before, but maybe now you also have a greater context. So this is the Rambam in the beginning of Hilchot Tshuva, Perek Aleph. So he is saying, Kol mitzvot shebetorah, bein aseh, bein lo taseh. Whether it's a positive commandment or a negative commandment. Im avar adam al achat mehem, bein bezadon, bein bishgaga. If somebody violated any of these commandments, whether purposely or unconsciously, when he does tshuva and he returns from his sin, he has to confess in front of God, blessed be He. If you look at the Rambam here, I didn't put this in my little sheet. You know how the Rambam in the Mishnah Torah, he introduces each section by saying what the mitzvah or the mitzvot in the Torah that he's going to discuss. The Rambam defines this mitzvah here. He says this mitzvah, there isn't a mitzvah of tshuva per se, there's a mitzvah of vidui. The Torah tells us we have to confess when we've sinned. And that Rambam is explaining here, right? So anybody who sins, who's violated any commandments, the Torah tells us that he has to confess his sin. Right? So the whole quote is דבר בני ישראל, איש או אישה כי יעשו מכל חטאות האדם, לימול מעל בהשם, והשמה הנפש ההיא. Right, so a man or a woman who does any sins of people, limol ma'al, to act against God, and that soul is guilty. V'hitvadu et chatatam, then they have to confess their sin. Asher asu v'heshiv et hashemo b'rosho v'chamishto yosef alav v'natam asher Hashem lo. That has to do with the immediate context there, but this is where the Rambam says we learn that for all sins. Zevidui dvari. What does it mean? V'hitvadu et? Zevidui dvari. This means you have to confess with words. This confession is a positive commandment. So I've marked here, there are 4 steps, essentially the 4 steps Rambam understands to be the 4 steps of tshuva, that and they're all going to be encapsulated within the mitzvah of vidui itself. So the vidui, Omer, he says, Ana Hashem, chatati aviti peshati lefanecha, v'asiti kach v'kach, v'hareinti uvoshti b'masi, uleolam eini chozer davar zeh. So he says, right, so I have sinned, right, in using these different words, chatati, peshati, aviti, and so forth. And we saw this in the Mishnah in Yoma, right? This is taken from Tzach, that the Kohen Gadol did his viduyim on Yom Kippur. First, he says, I sinned. V'asiti kach v'kach, and I did this. In other words, then he has to say specifically what it is that he sinned. And then he has to say, and I nichamti, I regret it, uboshti b'masai, and I am shamed or ashamed of my action or my actions, and I will never go back to this again. Zehu yikaro shel vidui. This is the essence of the vidui. V'kol marbeli v'dot marich minyan zeh harei ze meshubach. Right. The more that you do this kind of confession, then that's praiseworthy. So what I pointed out here is each of these statements is a different shlav. So the first thing, when you're doing tshuva is karat hachet, you have to recognize that you sinned. And that when you do the confessional, you're saying, An Hashem chatati aviti b'sham. You're saying, I acknowledge that I sinned. The second step is to say what exactly your sin was. That's an integral part of the do it. First, you have to recognize that you sin, and then you have to say, my sin was. And then you have to say, I regret the sin. Not just say, right? You have to take it to heart, right? That you regretted it, and that you, Kabbalah Latid, you have to accept upon yourself that you're not going to do this sin again. Those are the 4 steps of tshuva we see in the Rambam. I'm going to read till the end of the till the end here. It's not the whole parak, but it'll help us in terms of what we just learned. So it goes on to say, "B'chein ba'alei chatot v'hashemot ba'it shemiviyin korbanoteihem al shigagatan o al zonan." Right, so whoever has to bring korbanot, the korbanot that were brought b'shogeg, and certain, right, some of the nasham vadai is brought b'mezid. There's certain things that you bring nasham vadai for, even b'mezid. You don't get kapara for bringing these korbanot until you do tshuva. Yitvadu vidui dvarim. They have to say a confessional in words. Shenemar bitvadeh asher chata aleh. Became kol mechuyavei mitot beit din and mechuyavei malkot. Not just people who bring korbanot, but people who are liable to punishment from beit din, whether it's mitat beit din or people who are going to be whipped by beit din. Ein mitkaper lehem b'mitat. They only get their kapara once they do tshuva. That is, doing the punishment is not enough. Bringing the korban is not enough. Having the punishment is not enough. At every step, you have to tshuva. Himlo is somebody who harmed his fellow man, or he damaged his property. Even if he paid him back, he doesn't get kapara until he confesses and does tshuva and goes back from ever doing this again. Okay, so I pointed this out. The Rambam later on, and we'll look at the rest of the Rambam in Hilchot Tshuva. He also talks about. He also lays out the more or less what the Bartanura just laid out and that I showed you in the tabla about the different grades of erot, and also the idea of the Sira Mishtaleach, and also Bizban said that you don't have the Sira Mishtaleach. He talks about all of these things. But you see that this is something that the Rambam emphasizes, that at the heart of this is the vidui. And the vidui itself contains all the aspects, all the basic aspects of Ruba. So this is like, they stand that the vidui is the minimum. And he says, if the more that you do this vidui, then it is praiseworthy. So this is to remove from us the idea that, the mistaken idea that you can bring a korban or you can get some kind of punishment and that will bring you kapara. The punishment doesn't help if you didn't do tshuva. And the other thing that we get out of this is kind of an aside, but I'll just mention this. There's an ongoing debates in the United States and other parts of the world about capital punishment. And in halacha, and we see that later on in the first chapter here in Hilchot Tshuva, capital punishment is not primarily meted out to deter other potential criminals. It's done for the sake of the person who committed the crime, because they will not get kapara, right? If you've committed a crime for which you're liable capital punishment, you will not get kapara until you get capital punishment. You have to have you have to do tshuva first. But if you tshuva and you have the capital punishment, then you'll get kapara upon your death. So I'm just throwing that in there because I think about this when I hear the debates about capital punishment. And of course, this is a theological notion. So it's not something that you're necessarily in favor of promulgating one way or the other in a non-theocratic state. But I think it's an important point that I think the point is that the Torah metes out punishments primarily for the same person who committed the crime. It's so that it's in order for them to be able to kapara. That's what I have to say about that. I think we'll stop here. Any questions or comments? No. Okay. So we didn't quite get to the end of the chapter. But next week we'll do the last Mishnah, which is quite a fascinating Mishnah. Omer echtav yashuv, echtav yashuv, ein maspikin biyado la'asot tshuva. Somebody who says, I will sin and then I will do tshuva, I will sin and then I'll do tshuva, then God doesn't give them, doesn't supply them, as it were, with the power to do tshuva. We'll talk about that and all the rest of it next time.
I mean, that would contradict sort of the fourth and final step of Rambam's four steps of Vidui, which say, I will never do this again.
What contradicts? I'm not sure what you're saying.
I will sin and I will sin and I'll do tshuva. I will sin and I'll do tshuva. I will sin until tshuva. If you're saying, but in order to do tshuva, this is according to Rambam, in order to do tshuva, you have to say, I will never do this again. Where somebody who's sinning and doing tshuva, clearly, well, somebody who says that he's going to do that clearly is not doing the fourth step of Vidui. Okay, so we'll talk about this next time. And but yes, so this is one way of understanding it. It's right. The Mishnah doesn't say somebody who sinned and then did tshuva and then sinned and then did tshuva. It must be kibyado. It says somebody who says, I will sin and then I will do tshuva. So that it's indicative about the mindset of the person who's doing this. It's in his intent, milachatchila. But that will be our discussion next time. We'll talk about this next time. I think that's it for tonight. And thank you. See you next week.
Thank you. Good night.